warm welcome to the Enterprise World Magazine. Today's guest is a visionary bridging the gap between physical operations and digital intelligence. As the founder and CEO of Ivena, he is redefining how global enterprises, particularly in the manufacturing sector, leverage the synergy of AI and IoT to move beyond simple automation towards true cognitive manufacturing. Under his leadership, Ivena has emerged as a powerhouse for scalable AI-driven solutions that don't only just collect data, but also turn it into decisive action. Please join me in welcoming one of the most trusted leaders in AI and IoT to watch in 2026, Mr. Prabodh Chiplunkar. Prabodh, thank you so much for joining us, and it's a pleasure to have you on this show today.
The pleasure is mine, Sophie. Thank you for having us, and really proud to be partnering with you for this interview.
It's our honor, sir. So let's get started from the beginning. So you've moved from being a IoT pioneer to a leader in AI-centric solutions. So how has the mission of Ivena evolved to meet the intelligence-first demands of today's enterprises?
You know, it's an evolution, like you mentioned, because initially we obviously did a lot of work in making sure that machines and methods and measurements were being able to be captured from equipment, from lines and plants in the manufacturing space. But then we feel that it's not just enough to just connect things unless you make sense out of them, and sense out of them not just generically with plethora of data available, but really make it intelligent, because everything else is kind of a little bit of noise. So we've evolved into more of an AI-centric provider because we feel that we want the personas that we cater to get answers to things quicker, get answers to things the way they think about things, meaning if they want to ask a question or if they want to be told 2 or 3 things that are going to be happening rather than things that have happened. We feel that's what we expect in our consumer life, in a day-to-day life. So we feel that our AI has enabled us to live at the edge, and so does the industrialization of things also has to enable you to do so. So I think that's our kind of move from one to the other, if I may.
That's wonderful, sir. So manufacturing is at crossroads right now. So how is Ivena specifically, helping manufacturers move from reactive maintenance to autonomous operations using your AIoT platform, Playbook?
Yeah, so our platform not only enables the ingestion of data and putting things in the hands of controls or plant managers or other members of the team at the factory, which was actually done by many software providers and has been happening for many years, if I may. What we have done is we have moved from a fix it when it breaks or after it breaks mentality to understand the cognitive behavior of when it could break. And even that has matured over the years, and many providers have been able to bring out software that can do analysis ahead of time. But the ease at which Ivena's capability have been able to provide applications to their specific personas. So a quality manager versus a health and safety manager versus a plant manager, while they all may sing from the same sheet of music, they have to sing different parts of the song, and they have to see different parts of the data. So we've enabled that with the advent of IoT, the ability for each persona to get only the relevant information that is of most value to them. And that's why we feel that from reactive to maybe almost autonomous, because now I care about the myopic world that I am in, yet have opportunity to work with other data sets that are in my vicinity.
That's beautifully explained, sir. So the market is flooded with AI buzzwords. So what makes Ivena's composite AI and edge computing approach more impactful than the standard off-the-shelf solutions?
I always talk about this with our partners and customers, that Ivena's ecosystem is really not just the platform that helps you ingest data, make sense out of that data, or the art of the possible with that data. What we have done is we've actually built the outcomes, as I mentioned earlier, for various personas. So our approach and our distinction is really we do what they call non-obvious relationship attributes, a term we had coined some time back or worked with it, called NORA, non-obvious relationship attributes. That means we're trying to correlate dimensions of business, whether they get generated from structured data, from unstructured big data that comes from third parties that you don't generate but must use. It comes from flat files or EDI or exchanges that you make with your suppliers or exchanges of information in the ecosystem, or even things that come out of Facebook or Twitter or weather or other forums. Taking all the data sets, integrating them with your ERP or your core application or manufacturing data sets into more deterministic model. Our differentiation is that we take and find the correlation between all of these. And it's not that you need 4 different tools to find outcomes from 4 different channels. We want to integrate all of them together to give that view for that, and hence the word composite AI in some way, shape, or form, that includes the inclusion of all different sources of data and then create the relevance for the role. So we feel that that's our kind of secret sauce. And it's not one size fits all, and it's not one algorithm that fits all, but it has to be a combination of things that we take into account to provide that outcome. And that's why we're distinctively appreciated by our customers and partners.
That's very holistic right there. So many enterprises have plenty of data but no insights, right? So how does your solutions bridge the gap between factory floor and the C-suite to drive better business outcomes?
Yeah, this goes back to our persona-based approach that I've talked about a little bit, Sophie, which is, a CEO in a company or a plant manager or a COO isn't looking for a sensor reading necessarily, but he or she's looking at the impact of that sensor reading over time for the recipe or the process or the product they're generating, and how does that eventually impact some return for them. So our ability to aggregate that sensor or that data about a particular tag at a low level, and then integrate that to the view of what relevance a CEO might have or a plant manager might have, is what is the breaking the chasm of the data silos. So we feel that this data set by itself can't answer necessarily the question. It has to be aggregated with some other data for this particular role, as a C-suite, as an example. So the 3 or 4 dimensions I talked about, the ERP data, the Internet of Things data or the machine data, the third-party data, that big data that people generate outside of their own business, and then fourth, a lot of contextual or service data or other structured or unstructured data that can be sitting in your applications. You have to make sense of all of those silos in some unison. So our data cubes, if I may, that culminates all of these 4 together, gives you the outcome for the appropriate role, or for C-suite in this case. Like I said, you might have to do something with the lowest level of sensor data that comes off that a controls engineer may be looking at, but then aggregate that over time and be able to give that relevant value in relation to something else, to a CEO persona. So we feel that we're really we're not just passing the raw data onwards, we're processing the executive opportunity for them, understanding what that is. And we've done that through humans in the past, and now the resiliency comes in with AI, because you can automate a lot of that branch that we have built over time.
That's very insightful. So in an era of supply chain shifts and economic volatility, how does Ivena's technology help an enterprise become more adaptive rather than just efficient?
So, we look at efficiency is really about doing the same thing faster and cheaper, or doing more things for the same price. So that's people how they define efficiency. Adaptability, on the other hand, is about being able to bring or able to change what you're doing in an instant. So that traditional systems are usually rigid. Our AI OT platform enables the adaptive resilience by using real-time situational awareness. And for that, I just want to use big words. I don't want to just use big words, but I want to say, the 4 sources of data that I mentioned, there's many instances of each one of those, but these are the broad buckets. So we look at, any sudden, disruption in the supply chain or a spike in energy costs. Our models that are reading this constant stream in some way, shape, or form, they can simulate alternative scenarios and what if possibilities. So you look at, especially in the supply chain, whether it's the backward supply chain with your suppliers or whether it's the forward supply chain with your customers, we are able to simulate alternative scenarios that help from production schedules to logistics, dynamic routing, to help them move from a fixed mindset to maybe a liquid mindset where the business can look at obstacles before they arrive and avoid crashing into them, and be able to make shifts to the possibly strategy is a big word, but shifts to the transactions that people are doing in a particular time frame. So I think that's what the resiliency factor for us really means from a supply chain perspective.
That's super. So security is at paramount when AI is making operational decisions, right? So how do you ensure the explainability and integrity of the AI models Athena deploys for its clients?
Yeah, so at Ivena, and many customers do this, many companies do this, but certainly for Ivena, that the security is not just the physical security of assets, but it's also the trust in what AI's answers are. Do I trust that? Do I feel secure about what the AI is telling me? The consumer has gotten used to ChatGPT routing up a mountainous hike for somebody, or a movie review, or pathing a trip with the family in 4 different cities, with all hotels and everything. We trust that incredibly well if there was a bot that did that for us. But the opportunity in the industrial segment for having the explainability and integrity of the AI, it will take some time, and I think it's gotten to a good level of maturity. We believe that you can't have a machine shut down or be broken down without knowing the why of that. Earlier, it might have been okay because once it's up and about, not like nobody cares, but you can find the answers later. But the sooner I get to know the reason for that, I can then possibly next time around make sure it doesn't go down because of it, as well as this time I can fix it because I'm fixing at the right level. So the outcome that AI gives you as to the reasons, in this case, if AI were to look at, we want to ensure that our opportunity to provide that outcome is embedded in the multiple iterative approaches that our models have taken to mature, to give a secure handback to the answer as an answer to the consumer that's asking the question. So that's on the application or the AI's applicability in the answers from a security standpoint. The other thing that you mentioned is the physical vulnerability that a lot of times applications on the factory floor look for. So we do we wrap our AI in a zero trust security architecture. This ensures the training of the data and the model is untampered, so that the decision making is surrounded within the 4 walls of the constituents that we're serving, our customers. It's got the audit capability and it's got transparency, and brings that out to human operators as and when needed for adjustments. Because somewhere you have to bless it. No matter how automated AI is, somebody has to imbibe that into their lifestyle, whether it's industrial or at the personal level. So we feel that trust in AI has these 2 different elements, in the physical aspect and then in the software aspect of AI and the answers it gives after running its algorithms.
That's very informative. So with the rise of generative AI and 5G, how are you integrating these into the existing IoT stacks to keep your clients ahead of the curve? I think you just explained it, but if you can elaborate.
Yeah. No, I think Gen AI has yet another aspect, right? I mean, the ability for us to take any non-structured content and be able to put it with ease to collate that with a structured data set. We view generative AI as the communicative layer that can enable the modern enterprise, whereas things like 5G or even 6G as the nervous system or as the transport method to allow that. So we can look at using 5G type technology allow for massive arrays of, say, sensors with the near zero latency, which are critical for real-time application use cases. But generative AI really helps democratize data. For example, we're integrating natural language interfaces into our applications. Pretty much all the applications we have that. That means a persona of say a floor supervisor can ask a simple question about why is a particular line running slower than yesterday. If you're making these water bottles, right? You could say, why is this I'm supposed to be making 1,000 a minute and I'm at 800 consistently since yesterday. Why is that? And it will look at maybe a lot of the reason codes, maybe look at the quality data, it'll look at any operator issues, it will look at any methods that were used in there. So it'll bring all of that together, and that's where generative AI helps to deterministically give an answer from sources that are incredibly vast. And maybe it has to do some object recognition, maybe it has to look at some gestures, it has to validate some video feeds, and integrate all of that with the cycle count that you're getting at from the machine. So that advent is incredibly important, Sophie, that I feel. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So this brings me to the last question of the first segment. So looking back at your journey, this is more about your professional career and timeline. What is the most important lesson that you've learned about leading a team through the rapid shifts of the AI revolution?
That's a loaded question because it's goes beyond the technical astuteness that one may have. It goes beyond the new 3 or 2 letter acronyms we're all coming out with every so many months, goes beyond the number of customers you may have. And I feel I look at leadership as a strong cultural fit for all of us, and I feel that's probably the only thing that's constant in a team that binds them together. So, mine and a lot of my team members that I've been so lucky to work with, whether it's here in the US or in different parts of the world, the most important lesson that I feel is that culture and character will go way beyond capability. So I'd say that with some conviction, because knowing the change at the pace at which technology is changing, you may have people that are better attuned to some technology and others are still laggards. But if you have people that are not even willing to constantly move at the pace and contributing back rather than keeping knowledge to themselves, I think that would have been an impediment. And I'm really glad to say that that's not been the case with us. Our team members and the culture of leadership that we have imbibed within us, with all of us, has been that of contributive nature, that is of being fearlessly curious. And it's not the role of a leader to answer all the questions, because you can get someone else to do that, or technology can there. But it's the ability to have a round table around the questions that can be there for our business to go forward. And I'm glad at Ivena all the leadership team has been fearlessly curious, and we've promoted that culture of being open despite having differences of opinion of doing something. So I really feel that character will supersede capability.
That's well explained, and definitely I think culture and character speaks volumes for everybody. So that's a great one right there. So let's move on to the rapid fire round, which will be only short and spontaneous answers now. So my first question to you would be, one word to describe the future of the smart factory.
Engaging.
The biggest misconception about AI in the enterprise world today.
I'll give you 2, or maybe 1. Replacement or replacement of human resource. Replacement, maybe. That's the biggest misconception, that AI will replace everybody.
Your favorite real-world application of Ivena's tech that you've seen so far?
The most favorite real-world application of Athena's tech? I'd say our iServe product that has it's very centripetal to the success of our OEM partners. So I feel that.
Super. Predictive or prescriptive analytics, which is more important for 2026?
Inclusive, I would say, but yeah, prescriptive is probably where it would be. But it ought to be inclusive because it's got to bring the relevance of that prescription across many. So it's not one word, but if I have to pick between those two, I'd say prescriptive. But if I had to pick a word, I would say inclusive.
Good one. What keeps you at night, like data security or the speed of innovation?
I think it's the speed of innovation, because it's almost scary at times. Every day you hear things coming up, but it's also the hype so far. But I think if you somewhere baseline it and saying that's my starting point, so I feel that the speed of innovation, and not just for me, but also for a lot of my peers and the team members in this tech community, I think that is something that at least keeps me up at night, saying what's coming next.
Definitely, and that's the need of the hour. This is a creative question. If Ivena were a person, what would its defining character trait be?
If Ivena were a person, what would its defining trait or character would? Well, there's one thing that I feel that we got to be for everybody. We got to be reliable. So I would say reliability would be that trait in one word that I would like to have our customers, partners, employees feel about Ivena, that we're incredibly reliable.
I think that's a good way to describe it. So what is your personal mantra for navigating the AI gold rush?
The AI gold rush. Well, silver was growing quite a bit there in the middle there as well, so think of that too. But if I were to look at single mantra for the AI gold rush, I would say I think we have to shift from just becoming intelligent to becoming impactful. So I would say don't just build the ability to get more and more intelligent, which is fair, but if I can impact somehow, look at the impact and chase what that looks like, I think it would be maybe a very motivative opportunity. It's almost the opposite of what I used to think after I watched the movie Three Idiots. Have you seen it? It used to say that don't go after the outcome, go become intelligent. But in some way, shape, or form, I think once you come to a level, I think you have to figure out from a business perspective that enable the opportunity for impact. If I understand that, I can become better or relatably intelligent in that case. So I don't know if it's a roundabout way to say, but I would say look at chasing the impact and then become intelligent accordingly.
I think that's an intelligent answer right there. So this brings us to the wrap for the segment 2, which was fabulous. So in the segment 3, we would love to have your advice. So, there are many executives who feel AI FOMO, like fear of missing out. So, but they don't know where to start their transformation from. So, what is your 60-second masterclass for an enterprise leader ready to take their first step?
If I were to follow an advice that I do for myself, which is it's important to know the technology, but not without falling in love with the problem. So if you are not zealous enough to look at, hey, this is a real challenge that I'd like to solve, or I think I can solve, and here are the many reasons of why this problem occurs and the impacts, etc. If one identifies that and is comfortable and confident with that, the technology chasers will always figure out a way to keep up with it. So I feel that the AI FOMO leads to kind of random acts of digital, if I may, where you're doing tons of pilot tools or pilot applications that never see light of day. This is where businesses or entrepreneurs maybe can take a lesson to find out where's the business friction. So where the problem is, how can I be validating that more and more? And even if it's one small area, but a very well-defined problem, figure out how then you can apply technological advancements to the bottlenecks that keep you up at night. So that would be my thing. Don't just go after that I got to do something with AI with a Me Too attitude, but really define that space to some degree and then attach all the resources to that.
I think that's a golden piece of advice right there. So this brings us to the final segment. So looking towards the end of this decade, what is the next big thing in enterprise AI that isn't yet on most people's radar?
Yeah, I think one technology that I think has gotten some teeth, but really not gotten to its delivered promise just as yet. Maybe it's done in some cases, but not in all, is the entire agentic ecosystem. So I feel that there's a move away from tools just to answer questions on a website or about an application towards workflows that can be executed by bots or by this agentic ecosystem, if I may. So I feel that closing the loop, whether it's in retail, whether it's in construction, whether it's in airline, whether it's in telco, whether it's in manufacturing, fintech, I say from passive intelligence, just knowing something about something and taking an action that's humanly possible, can you look at orchestrating that action via a well-managed, secure, yet to the point agentic ecosystem. So I feel that's what's on people's radar, but I feel that they've not taken the full advantage of it. So that's coming, I feel.
That's informative. So this brings me to the final and last question. How do you see Ivenia's role evolving as we move towards Industry 5.0? Where does the focus shift back to towards the collaboration between humans and intelligent machines?
Yeah, if you look at Ivenia's context of our AI applications, we always say we are human-aware AI, because it's not going to replace the thought process and the tribal and the years of subjective capability that a human has. It could learn incredibly close to it, but we believe the future isn't about replacing technicians on the shop floor or agents at a kiosk for an airline, let's say, but it's given them kind of superpowers so that when you can parachute that human resources time, it's awfully myopic and it's very specific to solve all the other mundane stuff has been okayed by AI or by some technical automation, and then the human is going to be needed to kind of parachute in to be able to make sure that these superpowers are for overrides and management and things of that nature. So we believe that the enablement of this cognitive infrastructure that we're looking at, I feel Ivena has evolved in this kind of Industry 5.0 or the next step in that direction.
That sounds very promising. So this brings us to the end of the interview, but before we say goodbye, I just want to give you a small vote of thanks. So Prabodh, thank you so much for being with us today. Your insights into how Ivena is weaving AI into the very fabric of enterprise operations are incredibly timely. I think you've shown us that future isn't just about being connected, but it's about being intelligent, intentional, and impact-driven. So for all of our viewers right here, we will be soon back with more insightful conversations with the leaders shaping the next industrial revolution right here on the Enterprise World Magazine. Prabodh, thank you so much for your time and effort for this interview. I think we've had a very fruitful conversation. It was lovely meeting and talking to you. And I wish you all the best for your role and the company ahead.
It's a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much and have a great weekend ahead.
I will.